Morning all. I'd like to look maybe at a few more games of Robert Byrne this week. This game is from the 1952 Olympiad held in Helsinki, capital of Finland. So back in 1952, Robert was still an international master, and his opponent here was the mighty David Bronstein, who had just tied his World Championship match with Mikhail Botvinnik. And that was a bit under controversial circumstances where he missed an opportunity to win a game and could have won that match. So David Bronstein is one of the uncrowned kings of chess. The game is very, very interesting. Let's have a look. D4 from David Bronstein, and we see Robert playing D5, and now after C4, not a Queen's Gambit declined, but accepted. D takes C4, Knight F3, Knight F6, and the most usual move here is E3. But David Bronstein, very creative, dynamic, aggressive player, played actually Knight C3. Okay, and if Black tries to play normally here, not try and hold on to the pawn, which is generally a bad idea in the Queen's Gambit accepted, he could end up with quite a bad position, giving White a centre for free, basically, as he puts it in his annotation in the New York Times. There's an excellent, all his articles are available, by the way, on the New York Times website, and this is one of the games very special to him, that he held very specially. So he played actually here a very interesting move, A6. So in one way, okay, it's holding on to material, but in another way, it's a light square strategy, which is being demonstrated here. Black's not just going to play B5, but try and put pressure on the light squares. So we see E4, B5. Okay, and Black's position is under potentially a lot of pressure, even on this diagonal. We see actually E5 from David Bronstein, and Robert plays Knight D5. Now A4, and Black here resolves the pressure on B5 by taking on C3. B takes C3, and now White is threatening AB with that pin. So Bishop B7. Black's holding on. He's locked in this bishop, and he's also getting some light square control out of this. But now comes a horrible move to face. David Bronstein plays E6, and we see the move which appears virtually forced here, because Black doesn't really want these double pawns with a mighty opportunity for Knight E5 in front of the double pawns, and all sorts of horrible things after that could occur. Instead, he plays F6. So Robert plays this move and apparently walks away from the board, and David Bronstein starts thinking. So F6 is depriving the knight clearly of these two squares. Tactically, it's not quite working to do any sacrifice at the moment for White. This bishop is still hemmed in by this extra pawn, so it's not just the light square control, slight restriction of this bishop. Still, perhaps White should consider just playing bishop E2 to try and challenge this bishop later and try and make AB more effective. You can imagine bishop F3 later. After this F6 move, whilst Robert was walking around, on his way back, interestingly, Keres, who was playing board 1 for the USSR team at that time in the Olympiad, who, by the way, scored over 95% the year after in 1954. Incredible player, Keres. Basically, admonished, the word admonished is used, Robert Byrne for playing in such a manner against a huge creative, dynamic player such as David Bronstein. So Keres, for those of you who don't know, he was among the best players in the world mid 1930s and 60s. He won actually the Avro tournament in 1938, so he was a legitimate player to play Helskini for the World Championship title, but then World War II got in the way. So he's like one of the strongest ever players never to become officially world champion. And in 1948 there were rumours about some of the games, maybe some favouritism given for Botvinnik to win 1948. But anyway, that's a separate story. But basically, yeah, in this game, you know, it's a huge cultural significance that Robert Byrne is playing David Bronstein, who's just tied with Botvinnik, and you know, he's been also kind of intimidated, perhaps, by Paul Keres, you know, one of the greatest players never to become world champion as well during the game. So can he survive this position after f6? I believe with an engine view on this game, bishop e2 might be the way for white to get an advantage. White actually played g3 here. And now black can try and grab another pawn after this move with this double attack move, queen d5, double attacking f3 and e6. So what is going on here? Well, black's development is being disrupted severely. This bishop on f8, for example, how is this ever going to get out? Bishop g2, queen takes e6, 2 pawns up, bishop e3, but facing a lot of potential difficulties and dynamism as well from white, including, for example, d5 or knight h4, even just to go like this for e6 later. If white can get a rook and use e6, then this bishop is going to be terrible with the king in the centre potentially. So black has to be careful. He invests one more pawn move here, c6. So it seems very strange for black to play in this manner. But black is holding on to the 2 pawns, basically, because, you know, moves like knight h4, if this bishop is eliminated, then AB becomes more effective. As soon as white gets a pawn back, then black's had it really positionally. White castles, and we see queen c8. Robert basically, you know, said, I think to the effect that he's just trying his best, and no, mentally, in his notes, in his mental notes, he was just trying his best, and okay, and didn't want to admit the strength of the gambit that had been presented with him. But you know, chess is a fight, so okay. And after rook e1, it's up to white to really prove the gambit here. And we have here a move which fits the circumstances. If white gets enough pressure on its e-file, this will be devastating for black. This pawn really cannot move in this position without allowing further dynamic possibilities for white, maybe even d5. So what Robert does is ingenious, really. King f7, it fits in with the position. This diagonal is not so sensitive. Another benefit of this extra pawn is actually, you know, this diagonal is securer than usual. So king f7, and then we see a takes b5, which in Robert's notes might be premature because white could have maybe built up behind a takes b5 to make it more effective. But as it turns out in this continuation, okay, black keeps on to his double pawns. He wants to put restraint on d5, but he is getting rid of a pair of rooks. So some slight relief here as a pair of rooks come off. So does white have sufficient compensation for being 2 pawns down here? David Bronstein plays queen e2, and of course if this bishop ever moves, then if this bishop moves, it's on e7. Okay, so knight a6, which keeps an eye on the c5 square. Bishop f4, g6, and then there are possibilities that need to be factored in, even like bishop h6 here for e7 for a moment. The queen is guarding the e6 square. Everything's intact at the moment. Knight d2, but this knight now threatens some nasty stuff to go to e4 and then potentially to do some damage after that. We see now the move h5, so activating the rook like this that knight has left control of the h4 square. White actually doesn't really want, it seems, black to play h4, and there might even be more outrageous possibilities emerging off that, like g5 potentially if the rook's controlling the h5 square. We see h4 from white, which gives the possibility as well of this kind of thing, because black is sensitive on this diagonal with this bishop on a8. Looks a bit silly. Bishop b7 and now king h2, so this looks like a fine positional plan, at least to get compensation via the e6 square and this bishop on the diagonal. We see king g7 now from Robert. So, is it so easy for white? Rook a1, which seems to just want to tie black down a little bit more. Does the knight dare move from here? If it moves, one of the main problems is actually knight e4 to c5 as well. That would be a horrible, monstrous knight on c5 against this bishop. King h7. Black's really clinging on. He's trying to keep everything intact. Bishop h3, and white's improving that bishop now, and it looks like a higher quality bishop than this. But is the material actually worth something here? Can black further kind of simplify this position? We see the move queen d8 here, and potentially there's a kind of liberating idea, because this knight's not so bad for trying to liberate, and also there's a potential move here now as well to get rid of this bishop, so it's not actually that bad for black. And maybe David Bronstein recognises this, that things could start going a little bit downhill. Does he really want to move the bishop back here to try and discourage c5? I guess that's one option, but the option he chooses is actually knight e4. Okay, so black is prevented, it seems, from c5, but now black chooses bishop h6. Where can the white bishop run to, the dark square bishop? So white's bishop pair has been removed. Bishop takes, and the king is taking an active role here to recapture. And now, curiously, David Bronstein maybe is not thinking his position is actually that brilliant. Does the rook really have entry points here? He is still 2 pawns down. Okay, granted it's double pawns here. And maybe white has some ambitions of using the d file as an entry point, in particular d7. This next move, knight c5, actually doubles white's pawns. Now, black takes. So white's got double pawns. But this c file is an issue. Queen c7. Check. King goes to g7. Rook d1, dominating the d file. Is the entry point important? Well, black plays now just bishop c8. Guarding d7, bishop g2, and now bishop e6. And it really is getting less and less convincing, white's material deficit. Where is the positional compensation now? Queen e3, bishop f7, rook a1, and now even the rook is taking that key central file now. Rook a6, okay, some pressure on c6. This is parried with bishop d5. White is drifting into a completely lost position now. Bishop takes d5, rook takes d5. 2 pawns down still. And now, after queen e6, black doesn't mind trying to give back some material. He recognises that this rook and pawn ending after rook e5, if white takes on c6, is going to be okay. In fact, after queen takes c6, the strongest, maybe just a resourceful rook takes c5. Let's quickly check. I don't think the intention might have even been to take queens here. Just taking, I think rook. No, just taking is good. If taking here, then white has queen e8. Ooh, this is very nasty actually. Very, very nasty, with rook a8 to follow. So it's very important to get the queens off. And then this will be fine for black, so that apparently this is okay. That's the way to play it. So in this critical position, David Bronstein bells out with Queen h3, going 3 pawns down. Rook takes c5. It's too much surely now. Rook a8, still with some ambitions maybe to get to the black king, maybe via the e6 to get coordination. This is blocked with rook f5 and also counter-attacking potentially. Black is 3 pawns up. Queen f1, Queen b7, Rook d8, and now Rook d5, just trying to get the rooks off. Rook e8, Queen d7, that rook is now being evicted. Now Rook d3 gaining more space, Queen e1, and now Rook d5. Black's completely solid here and consolidated, 3 pawns up, and David Bronstein resigns. I think it was one of David Bronstein's only defeats in this Olympiad. He scored 80%, David Bronstein. This is his only defeat in this Olympiad of 1952. So a fantastic victory for the young Robert Byrne, who was an IM at the time, playing not against just one of the strongest players in the world who could have beaten Botvinnik quite easily, but also being admonished during the game by Paul Keres, the Crown Prince of Chess, who also was a worthy player of the world title status. So he's really up against the finest USSR players, and he triumphs. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.